Hey everybody, Assassin's Creed Origins was reviewed by Noah Butner. I'm Scott Meany, the community director for DualShockers.com, and we're presenting the video version of that review. For the full review, you can go to DualShockers.com and check out the full text. For years, the Assassin's Creed franchise has been the subject of delays, devotion, and non-numeral entries to the series. That's left a bad taste in players' mouths, leaving fans on a constant emotional roller coaster ride. Finally, 10 years after the launch of the first game, Assassin's Creed Origins makes a meaningful mark on history, a mark that long-standing fans and series newcomers will remember for years to come. After their success with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, the team over at Ubisoft Montreal immediately began work on Assassin's Creed Origins. The studio's genetics are in full view here. From sailing the Egyptian seas to traversing the outrageously expansive open world, I never felt like there wasn't something to do or some small crevice to explore. That's not even counting all the underwater exploration I didn't get to do because I ran out of time. Seriously, the world feels at least twice the size of Black Flag, and all of that space in the game that was open seas has been reimagined as living, breathing towns and cities. Everything from ancient Egyptian tombs to the bustling libraries of Alexandria feels alive in some way or another. That keeps you interested while you play. Where Black Flag was an incredible and immersive pirate game, Assassin's Creed Origins clearly took great aspects from it and improved upon them further to provide players with an authentic Assassin's Creed experience. While the open deserts of Egypt are not the most conducive to parkour, similar to a bunch of regions we may have seen in Black Flag, the moment where you reach a bustling Greek city, you'll instantly appreciate the dichotomy of these two settings. Though there are some aspects that you would expect to change that actually don't, the sheer number of people in the cities does not constitute a need for subtlety or assassin-like approaches to gameplay. Even with dozens of citizens and sometimes soldiers on view, I had no trouble dispatching people in the middle of crowded streets. And in this game, you can't just chalk that up to being Master Assassin because Bayek, the game's protagonist, is not one. Well, not at first at least. Equally important to this game's setting is its story. Bayek finds himself with a long and unkempt beard after months of trying to find justice for events that took place in his past. It's this basic revenge story that propels the game's narrative and serves as a jumping off point for what eventually concludes with the formation of the Brotherhood of the Assassins. It's this later plotline that kept me interested in what was an interesting yet overall clunky story. Admittedly, I may have, at times, not known who I was killing or why this character's betrayal was so meaningful. The idea that these events were leading up to the creation of such a memorable and iconic order was enough to pull me through the story's weakest points. Mostly the first and third acts, those ones really stand out. Another highlight, one of the most influential points of the plot is Bayek's wife, Aya. You genuinely feel excited when you see her after you've been away on missions for too long, and their chemistry makes sense both in and out of cutscenes. But this also leads her to her own unique story path that adds conflict to Bayek's plotline later on, and that tension is really worthwhile. It wouldn't be Assassin's Creed without an Animus, and what happens outside the Animus is also compelling this time. The player is given free rein to explore and research the real world as much as they want. I don't want to spoil too much, but it's an aspect of the game that I think the developers pulled off really well. They made sure it stood out in the series. At the beginning of the game, I was very confused with the order of things. As you can see in our first 30 minutes of gameplay video, parts of which have been spliced into this video, Bayek begins his journey as a younger man. The beginning of Assassin's Creed Origins highlights the start of Bayek's fight against the Ancient Order. Then, out of nowhere, we see him fighting bodyguards in a different time completely against people he'd started fighting. Then after the prologue, we're suddenly catapulted into the nearby future. In other words, the story starts on shaky grounds, and it takes some investment into the plot to understand where you are in the timeline early on. There are cutscenes that take place after each kill that can kind of rip you out of the story and leave your disbelief unsuspended. The first time it happened, I didn't know what was going on. As they became more frequent, however, I realized that this ritual was representative of ancient Egyptian culture, and that's always cool. It's immediately evident that Ubisoft Montreal spent a lot of time crafting the side missions. It could be a murder mystery about a killer defacing Greek statues, or finding out why a girl is selling counterfeit relics of your homeland. The majority of Assassin's Creed Origins side missions tell unique, enthralling narratives that are always worth your time. In fact, the game attempts to show them off really well by making the level requirement for main story quests increase at a faster rate than they give you XP, encouraging you to go off and seek those outside quests to level up. I was never annoyed by this because the next story mission was never more than a few side missions away, and on top of that, each side quest rewarded me with a great story, a fantastic reward, or both. That said, those who like to keep an organized quest log should be pretty wary. There's no way to abandon quests in the version I played, leading me to have all the quests I didn't do pile up in my quest log. It just looks unkempt. Next, there are several unique activities that you can progress to pass the time. There's the Hippodrome, a very Ben-Hur style chariot racing event, and 2 gladiator arenas with their own sets of bosses and challenges. Both activities have their own multiplayer aspects that allow you to challenge people on your friends list. While I found these events to be distractions for the most part, their unique rewards and their tied-in side missions added to the experience. In the Hippodrome, I had to choose sides in a continually developing conflict between 2 warring factions of fans. In the gladiator arena, I needed to help indentured gladiators earn their freedom and start over in their new lives. I didn't find the events themselves to be that fun, especially in the arena if you forego the warrior skill tree, but the umbrella experience they provide is, so that's enough for me. Speaking of that warrior tree, Origins has made several changes to combat and player choices that make the game feel more like an RPG. And for a world this big, that's really appreciated. The seer tree allows utility tools like sleep darts, animal taming, and smoke bombs. The hunter tree lets you equip multiple bows and fire them in slow motion, and the warrior tree will enable you to overwhelm your opponent with charged attacks and devastating combos. Each skill within the tree feels rewarding, especially as you begin to unlock the later abilities in each tree. In the end, I wound up not fully committing to any of the trees and instead taking a few skills from each category. There were some interesting paths that allowed me to find shortcuts through each tree and find a way to play that catered more to my tastes. While the combat has been completely overhauled, I really took joy in spreading a plague of toxic darts and escaping in a puff of smoke with my smoke bombs. However, I imagine some players might invest heavily in the warrior tree and forgo stealth altogether. The knowledge that playing through the game twice or even 3 times could result in different experiences really speaks to the longevity of the game. In fact, there's part of me that already wants to replay the game just to be able to dive off rooftops and fire arrows in slow motion. Previous Assassin's Creed games have always had you mashing button inputs to fend off crowds of enemies, but in Assassin's Creed Origins, there are hitboxes, shields, and attack combos. That's not to say that the combat doesn't get repetitive. Towards the end of the game, it definitely does. However, the option to use different types of weapons, see different types of attacks, and even go defensive really made breaking from stealth feel significant. Knowing that if I was spotted by an enemy fort, I would have to block and parry attacks from all angles added an extra layer of caution to almost everything I did. There were several times where I was getting pinned into a corner and thought I could fight my way out as in the previous games, but instead, I was deservingly stun-locked to death in a corner. Bayek, once again, isn't a master assassin throughout the game, and even the combat reminds you of this. Another RPG element of the game is loot. While you're exploring ancient Egypt, you're always on the lookout for quests or activities that can grant you better gear. There are 3 rarity levels for everything: mounts, outfits, weapons, shields, and bows. While the legendary weapons, shields, and bows have unique effects, such as allowing you to do 200% more damage but being limited to 33% of your total health, the legendary outfits and mounts don't provide any meaningful stats. As such, you could stick with your basic outfit and first camel for the entirety of the game without a difficulty spike. Certain legendary pieces of gear are available through microtransactions, such as the appearance of a mummy warrior or a set of bows of high quality. While I don't like the idea of being able to pay money to do better in a game, the legendary bows and weapons I was rewarded through quests were much more interesting both aesthetically and mechanically than those you could buy. After the story ended and the credit rolls at about the 30-hour mark for me, I found myself looking over the map and still having tons of interesting side quests to do and 15 untouched areas to explore. I really appreciated how much there is to do in this game. Assassin's Creed Origins has worthwhile mechanics and a serviceable story. When placed together in the expansive and beautifully detailed setting of ancient Egypt, these work together to provide a genuinely fun gaming experience. Assassin's Creed Origins may not be as revolutionary of a release in the open-world action-adventure RPG genre as The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, but it does provide an expansive single-player experience filled with hours of memorable content without being required to purchase anything extra. Assassin's Creed Origins is the most memorable entry in the series in years. It answers age-old questions like why are assassins missing their ring fingers, and it's an excellent game to start with if you're a newcomer. Overall, while I didn't think the story was consistent in quality throughout the entire game, and I didn't always know what was going on or why the stakes were as high as they were at times, it culminates in a payoff that any fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise will nerd out about for a long time. For more details, be sure to check out DualShockers.com for Noah's full written review. I've been Scott Meany for DualShockers TV. If you'd like, please like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate it, and it really helps us grow the video channel for DualShockers. Thanks, everybody.